right, everybody, guess what today is? Today is day 20 of the advent of cyber, and we are going to continue our story with Elf McSkidy and find out who got into Santa's workshop. Let's go ahead and jump over to the other screen and find out what we've got going on for today. All right, continuing on with our story, we now can learn more about the mysterious device that we found in Santa's workshop. Elf Forensic McBlue has successfully found the device ID. Now that we have the hardware ID, guess what? We can now help Elf McSkidy reverse the encrypted firmware and find interesting endpoints to the IoT for exploitation. Let's go ahead and start our machine. All right, while that turns on, let's go ahead and check out our objectives for today. Today's objectives: what is firmware reverse engineering? What are the techniques for extracting code from the firmware? Can we extract hidden keys from the encrypted firmware? And can we modify and rebuild the firmware? So let's read through this while our box is updating. All right, what is reverse engineering? Every embedded system, such as cameras, routers, smartwatches, all of your IoT devices have pre-installed firmware which have their own set of instructions running on the hardware processor. It enables the hardware to communicate with the other software running on the device. The firmware provides low-level control for the designer or the developer to make changes at the root level, or the lowest level possible. Reverse engineering is working your way back through the code to figure out how it was built and what it does. Firmware reverse engineering is extracting the original code from the firmware binary file and verifying that the code does not carry out any malicious or unintended functionalities like undesired network communications, which I think we're going to find out later today. Firmware reversing is usually done for security reasons to ensure the safe usage of the device that may have critical vulnerabilities leading to possible exploitation or data leakage. Consider a smartwatch whose firmware is programmed to send out all incoming messages, emails, etc. to a specific IP address without any indication to the user. So think about that. Think about if you went out and you bought a smartwatch and you put that smartwatch on and you hooked it up to everything and it was sending out all of your information to an IP address that you didn't know of. On the back end, you never saw that, but all that information is going out to that unwanted IP address because it's in the firmware. Firmware reversing steps. The firmware is first obtained from the vendor's website or extracted from the device to perform the analysis. Then the obtained extracted firmware, usually a binary file, is first analyzed to figure out its type, the bare metal and the OS base. It is verified that the firmware is encrypted or packed. The encrypted firmware is more challenging to analyze as it usually needs a tricky workaround, such as reversing the previous non-encrypted releases of the firmware or performing hardware attacks like side channel attacks to fetch the encrypted keys. Once the encrypted firmware is decrypted, different techniques and tools are used to perform reverse engineering based on that type. Types of firmware analysis. Firmware analysis is carried out through two techniques, a static and a dynamic. We've talked about static and dynamic analysis previously. Let's go ahead and scroll up some. So, what's a static analysis? Static analysis involves an essential examination of the binary file contents, performing its reverse engineering and reading the assembly instructions to understand the functionality. This is done through multiple commonly used command line utilities and binary analysis tools such as Binwalk, Firmware ModKit, and Firmwalker. We're not going to go through the actual definitions of these. Dynamic analysis. Firmware dynamic analysis involves running the firmware code on actual hardware and observing its behavior through emulation and hardware-software-based debugging. One of the significant advantages of dynamic analysis is to analyze unintended network communication for identifying data pilferage. The following tools are used commonly for dynamic analysis: QEMU or QEMU, and the GNU debugger. We'll skip the definitions. Shall we reverse the firmware? Let's do it. We've already launched the machine. We can go through this. At the bottom, it says, while reversing the firmware, use the password Santa with a capital S 1010 if we're prompted for a password. Okay. So let's go ahead and scroll down. After identifying the device ID, McSkidy extracted the encrypted firmware from the device. To reverse engineer it, she needs an unencrypted version of the firmware first. Luckily, she found it online. Open the terminal and run the dir command or the dir command. You will see the following directories. All right, so let's hop over to our machine and check it out. Oh, hey, McSkidy. Okay, I think McSkidy's going to watch over our shoulder while we do this. Okay, so if we type in dir and we hit enter, we see that we've got bin, bin unsigned, and firm modkit. Perfect. The bin folder contains the firmware binary, while the firm modkit folder contains the script for extracting and modifying the firmware. In this exercise, we will primarily be using two tools, the Binwalk tool and the firmware modkit. All right. Now, coming over to the task, we will perform the reverse step-by-step. All right, let's do this. In this step, McSkidy will verify whether the binary firmware encrypted.gpg is encrypted through file entropy analysis. First, change the directory to bin folder by entering the commands. She will use the Binwalk tool to verify the encryption using the command binwalk-e-n and then firmware 2.2 encrypted. So let's check this out. Let's type in binwalk. And then we've got e, n, and firmware. All right, there is our readout. In the above output, the rising entropy edge means that the file is probably encrypted and has increased randomness. That's not very good. Finding unencrypted older version. Since the latest version is encrypted, McSkidy found an older version of the same firmware. Nice job, McSkidy! The version is located in the bin-unsigned folder. Why is she looking for an older version? What's the deal with the older version? Well, this is because she wants to find encryption keys that she may use to decrypt the older or the original firmware and reverse engineer it. McSkidy has decided to use the famous FMK tool for this purpose. Okay, let's go to the bin-unsigned folder. So CD, let's go backwards. CD bin-unsigned. All right. Now we want to extract it. So let's extract firmware.sh, and we want to extract firmware. Oop, not fire. Firmware. Let that run. All right, we need the password. So this is the password that we got earlier with capital SANTA 1010. All right, firmware has been firmware extraction successful. Let's go ahead and scroll down. All right, finding encryption keys. The original firmware is GPG protected, which means that we need to find a public, a private, and a paraphrase to decrypt the originally signed firmware. We know that the unencrypted firmware is extracted successfully and stored in the FMK folder. The easiest way to find keys is to use grep. The -i flag in the grep command ignores all case sensitivity, and the -r is recursive, so it will go through all of the subdirectories. So let's go ahead and use grep and see if we can find any word matching key. So let's go grep -ir and type in key. Okay, after running that command, you can now see by scrolling through this, we see key. So we see that we've got the word key throughout all of here. And if we come down to the bottom, we see public key and private key. So we've found our keys. All right. Continue on. What do we got? Bingo! We have the public keys and the private keys. All right. But what about the paraphrase, usually used with the private key to decrypt a GPG encrypted file? Well, let's just do the same thing. Let's hit our up arrow key and let's look for paraphrase. There's our paraphrase. Paraphrase Santa at 2022. Let's scroll down. Yep, that's exactly what they wanted us to do. So McSkidy has finally located the public, the private, and the paraphrase. Way to go, McSkidy. Now we have the keys. Let's import them using the following commands. All right, so we're going to stay in the bin unsigned folder. We're going to do gpg --import fmk root fs gpg private. And remember what we get, what our password was? Santa at, whoop, let's type it right. At 2022. All right, that one was imported, and we probably are needing to do the same thing. There we go below. Let's import the public key. So let's remove private and put public. All right, that is imported. Now we can list the secret keys by typing gpg -- list secret keys. All right, and we've got our printout here, McSkidy at santagift.shop. Once the keys are imported, McSkidy decrypts the firmware using gpg command. Again, change to the directory by entering the cd and go back to the bin folder. All right, so let's do cd, and then let's go into the bin folder. Let's just hit ls, make sure we're in. Yep, there we are. All right, so now we need to do gpg. We're going to do firmware. And our passphrase is going to be Santa at 2022. After the decryption, once you issue the ls command, the decryption file will look like the following. So we do ls. And now we got firmware 2.2 encrypted and firmware 2.2 encrypted.gpg. Perfect. Let's go ahead and scroll up. This is the simplest step. We can now use Binwalk or FMK to extract the code from the recently unencrypted firmware. In this example, we are going to go ahead and use the FMK tool to extract the code. So let's type in extract again, firmware, and we're going to do firmware 2.2 encrypted and go ahead and hit enter. And now we're seeing the extraction. Firmware extraction successful. All right. All right, McSkidy has finally been able to reverse the complete firmware and extract essential files she will use for the IoT exploitation in the next room. Ooh, that sounds like tomorrow's room. She has used the keys for the older version 1.0 to decrypt the latest version 2.2 of the same firmware. The camera folder in the fmk/rootsfs directory will contain all of the necessary files to be used in the next task. All right, let's go down and answer our questions. Great job. Way to go, McSkidy. I think I can take it from here, though. I mean, if you want to leave, you can. You don't have to sit over the top of my shoulder. All right. What is the flag value after reverse engineering the file firmware .2.2 GPG? So, let's see. What is the paraphrase? Oh, we know what the paraphrase is. Santa at 2022. All right, so now let's find the flag. So we are in here. Let's do ls. And now we now have an FMK folder. So let's check out our FMK folder. And let's see what we got in our FMK folder. We see rootfs, image parts, and logs. So let's check out our rootfs folder. And we're going to check out what's in this one. And here we go. Here's our camera folder that we're going to look at for our next task tomorrow. And it looks like we have our flag right here. So let's check out the flag. Cat flag. Whoop. Let's see if we can we copy and paste this? Well, it definitely is going to copy and paste it to the next line. All right, hit submit. All right, after reversing the encrypted firmware, can you find the build number for root FS? So let's go ahead and hit this hint because it's going to show us something that we haven't seen. So in here we got use ls. We've been using ls to show what files are in there, but we want to put a -LAH and then space and then an asterisk. And why do we want to do that? We want to do that so we can see all of the hidden files, because this is going to be a hidden file. So we're in our root FS and we do ls -AHL and we can do an asterisk. And now you see we've got all these files. So let's go ahead and scroll through here and see if we can find the encrypted firmware number. Here we go. So now we have root FS build 2.6.31. And submit, and we are done with day 20 of the Advent of Cyber. Did you know we have a wonderful community on Discord? If you join us there, you can count on nice conversations, cybersecurity tips and tricks, and room help from our mods and mentors. Also, our Discord admin has put some rooms out as well. You can try a hard one or an easy one. That is going to do it for today. I'd like to thank McSkidy for coming along. We probably could not have done that without you, so thank you. And to everybody else, we will see you tomorrow.